The wine glass slipped from my hand before I even realized what I'd said. It hit the edge of the kitchen counter, split clean in half, and rolled onto the tile with a hollow clink that felt far too quiet for what had just happened. Liam's eyes didn't blink, didn't move, just fixed on me, unflinching, like he'd suddenly frozen in the middle of an ordinary night that had turned into something irreparable. "You said what?" he asked. His voice wasn't raised. That made it worse. I wanted to take it back. God, I wanted to rewind 10 seconds and laugh it off. But the words still hung there. Raw, stupid, venomous. I had told him, mid-argument, mid-anger, that my ex was more skilled in bed. It wasn't true. Not really. But in that moment, when he'd accused me of being emotionally distant, of not caring about our marriage anymore, I'd wanted to hurt him. To win. To make him feel the same smallness I'd been swallowing for months. Now all I could hear was the faint hum of the refrigerator, the slow trickle of spilled wine dripping from the counter's edge onto the floor. "Liam," I whispered, my throat tight. "I didn't mean." He stepped back like my voice was a weapon. "You didn't mean it," he repeated softly, but there was something dangerous under that softness, something controlled, restrained, mechanical. "Then why did you say it, Emma?" "Because you looked at me like you didn't love me anymore. 'Cause I wanted you to feel something. Because lately you've been here but not with me." I couldn't say any of that. Instead I just stood there, my pulse hammering, hands trembling, eyes burning. We had been married for 7 years. Together for 10. Through a mortgage, miscarriages, promotions, therapy sessions, late-night laughter. Through every messy, complicated layer that comes after the honeymoon fades. And yet, somehow, one cruel sentence could ruin it all. "I was angry," I said. "You were accusing me of not caring. So you brought him into this." His voice cracked. "You compared me to that guy." Liam's jaw clenched hard. I could see the pulse in his neck. He turned away, pressing both hands against the counter, breathing slow and heavy. I wanted to touch him, to bridge the distance I'd created. But when I took one step forward, he said without turning, "Don't." That one word cut deeper than a scream ever could. "Stop." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was his shallow breathing and the faint hiss of rain starting outside. Soft, rhythmic, almost taunting. I thought he'd calm down. He always did. We fought before, badly even, but we always circled back. Two people who didn't know how to give up on each other. But then he straightened. His voice was quiet when he spoke again. Too quiet. "I need some air," he said, grabbing his jacket. "Liam, please just wait." He didn't. The door closed behind him with a sound that didn't echo. It landed flat. Final. I stood there for a long time, staring at the puddle of wine on the tile. It looked like blood under the dim light. That night he didn't come home. Morning came, but the house felt foreign. Every object suddenly colder, sharper, like it had chosen his side. I sat on the couch scrolling through our old texts, rereading jokes, plans, photos, proof that we had once been us. He'd read my messages but didn't reply. Around noon I heard his car. My stomach twisted with relief and dread. He walked in calmly, no anger this time, no visible fury. Just clarity. There was a folder in his hand. "Liam," I started. "I didn't mean what I said. You know I." He set the folder on the table right between us. His eyes met mine, unreadable but glassy. "I talked to a lawyer," he said simply. "These are the initial papers." My breath caught. It didn't feel real. Divorce wasn't something we did. It was something other couples did, the ones who gave up, who cheated, who stopped trying. We fought, yes, but we loved. Or so I thought. "Liam, you can't be serious," I said, half laughing, desperate. "You're doing this over one fight. Over one stupid thing," I said in anger. He blinked slowly. "No, Emma. I'm doing this because I realized that stupid thing you said came from somewhere real." He looked down, fingers brushing the folder edge. "You've been distant for months. I've been trying to fix it, thinking maybe it was work or stress or us needing a break. But what you said, it wasn't an accident. It was truth you buried until it slipped. It wasn't, I whispered. I swear it wasn't. He sighed, closing his eyes. You said your ex was more skilled. The words hung between us like a physical weight. You can't unsay that. I felt something break inside me, quiet, irreversible. That night, after he left again, I sat alone on the bed staring at the space he used to fill. The room smelled like his cologne, cedarwood and detergent and something faintly metallic. I pressed my face into his pillow until the scent faded. In my chest, guilt and denial warred. Had I just destroyed everything? Or had it been falling apart long before I noticed? My mind kept flashing back to the argument. How it started, how it escalated, the hurt in his eyes when I said that sentence. And beneath the guilt, a darker thought whispered, one I tried to silence but couldn't. Was I lying when I said it wasn't true? Because a week ago I had seen a message from my ex. And I hadn't deleted it. I hadn't meant to read it. It had popped up on my screen late at night. A simple, hey, long time. The name beneath it was one I hadn't seen in years. Ethan. My ex. My first everything. The one who taught me what love could feel like, and what it could destroy. First I ignored it. I had no interest in digging through old ashes. But a week later I found myself opening it. Then replying. Then reminiscing. Our messages were harmless, or so I told myself. Little bursts of nostalgia, of shared history. Nothing physical, nothing scandalous. Just emotionally dangerous. He was in town for a few days, he said. Wanted to catch up. I told him no. Then maybe. Then finally just coffee. That was 3 days before I told Liam that my ex was more skilled. Now, staring at the divorce papers, I wondered if I'd subconsciously wanted Liam to find out. Maybe that cruel sentence wasn't a slip at all. Maybe it was a confession in disguise. I hadn't slept since he left. My mind replayed everything like a looped recording I couldn't pause. Ethan's message, Liam's face, my own voice saying something I couldn't unsay. The guilt felt like glass in my chest. By the 3rd day I couldn't take it anymore. I texted Liam. Please, can we talk? One last time. He didn't answer immediately. When he finally replied, it was one line. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. The house. I spent that whole day cleaning a home that already felt like a memory. I put on the dress he once said made me look like the woman he first fell in love with. I didn't know what I was hoping for. Forgiveness, maybe. Or at least the chance to explain the real betrayal that had happened long before the words left my mouth. When he arrived, I knew something was different. He wasn't angry anymore. He looked resolved. Like a man who had already buried something and was only returning to say goodbye. He sat across from me at the dining table. The same one where we'd eaten every meal, fought every fight, and built a life together. Liam, I began softly. Before you sign anything, I need you to know what really happened. He didn't interrupt. Just folded his hands and listened. I told him about the message from Ethan. About the innocent texts that turned into something heavier. About the coffee I almost agreed to but never actually went to. I never saw him, I said quickly. Not once. But I didn't delete the messages either. I let them sit there like a secret. I thought I could handle it. I was wrong. He looked down at his hands. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to hurt you. Because I didn't even know why I responded. I wasn't looking for him. I was just lonely. Lonely, he repeated, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. I nodded, tears slipping before I could stop them. You stopped touching me, Liam. Stopped asking me how my day was. Everything became routine, mechanical. And I kept trying to bring it up, but you brushed it off, said we'd be fine. That we were just busy. He looked up then, eyes shining. So talking to your ex was your solution? No, I said, shaking my head. It was a mistake. The kind that happens when you're desperate for someone to notice you again. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally he sighed. You know what hurts most. I looked at him, barely breathing. That for a moment, he said, voice trembling. I believed you. When you said he was more skilled. I actually sat in my car and wondered what I was doing wrong. I thought maybe you'd been unhappy for years, and I just never saw it. Broke then. My heart cracked under the weight of his words. Liam, no, I whispered, reaching across the table, but he didn't take my hand. It wasn't true. It was cruel. I just wanted to hurt you the way I was hurting. He blinked, jaw tight. You succeeded. I swallowed hard, fighting the lump in my throat. What happens now? He looked at me for a long time before answering. Now I file the papers. I felt the floor tilt under me. You're really ending this? Yes. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if every word from you hides another truth. I wanted to scream, to beg, to promise I'd fix it. But deep down I knew he was right. The damage wasn't in what I said. It was in what I'd allowed to live inside me before that night. The doubt, the emptiness, the silent betrayal of staying while already drifting. After he left, I sat in the silence he'd always filled. The clock ticked louder than it ever had. The air felt thinner, the light harsher. Opened my phone. Ethan's chat was still there. The last message read, "You still think about me, don't you?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a second I considered replying, if only to say no. But then I realized that even typing that would keep the chain alive. So I didn't reply. I held my breath and hit delete conversation. The screen went blank. And for the first time in weeks, I cried not for Liam or for what I lost, but for the version of myself that had needed attention to feel alive. A week later, an envelope arrived in the mail. His handwriting on the front, Emma Reed. Inside were the signed divorce papers. And a note, short and devastatingly kind. You were my greatest love. But love isn't supposed to hurt like that. Take care of yourself, Emma. I pressed the note to my chest, sobbing until I couldn't breathe. He hadn't written it out of anger. He wrote it out of finality. That was the moment I understood something people rarely admit. That betrayal doesn't always begin with someone else's arms. Sometimes it starts quietly, in the spaces where communication dies and longing festers. I didn't cheat with my body. But I cheated with my silence, my curiosity, my hunger for validation. And in the end, that was enough to ruin everything. Months passed. The house was sold. I moved into a smaller apartment near the river, where the mornings were gentler and the nights lonelier. Sometimes I'd walk along the water and imagine what I'd say to him if I ever saw him again. Maybe I'd tell him I was sorry in a way that words couldn't capture. Maybe I'd tell him he was right to leave. Mostly though I said nothing. Just watched the sunlight ripple on the surface, wondering how something so beautiful could reflect something so broken. Because the truth was, he hadn't divorced me over one cruel sentence. He divorced me over the truth hiding behind it, a truth even I hadn't wanted to face. That I'd loved him. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped respecting what that love required to survive. And that, in the end, was the deepest betrayal of all.